The first time he showed me he cared, it felt like a rescue. We had a terrible fight, the kind that leaves you trembling and breathless, with tears streaming down your face. He had called me names I won't repeat, had broken a plate against the kitchen floor, and then he'd gone silent, storming out of the room. I was left there, standing in the wreckage of a piece I thought we had built, feeling like my world was ending. But then he came back. He found me crying on the sofa and sat down, his anger completely gone. He took my hand, his touch so gentle and loving. "I am so sorry," he said, his voice raw with regret. "I would never hurt you. I don't know why I get so angry. It's just because I love you so much. I'm afraid to lose you." He hugged me, and in that moment all the pain of the fight disappeared. The broken plate, the harsh words, they vanished under the weight of his heartfelt apology and affection. That intense feeling of relief, that love that followed the pain, was the most powerful feeling in the world. It was a high that made me forget the low. That was the trauma bond. It became a cycle, a beautiful, tragic dance we performed over and over again. The low would start with something small, a subtle criticism, a comment about my outfit, a sigh of disappointment when I didn't get something right. Then would come the anger, the verbal lashings, the fear that would grip my stomach. And then, without fail, would come the high, the intense, over-the-top apology, the promises to be better, the deep, soul-bearing conversations where he would tell me I was the only person who understood him. He wasn't just my partner. He was my entire world. He had convinced me that he was the only one who truly cared for me, and that my friends and family were just jealous of our intense connection. He had created a bubble for us, a world where our fights and makeups were the only thing that mattered. My friends couldn't understand. "Why are you still with him?" they would ask. "He's so terrible to you." But they didn't see the good parts. They didn't see the way he would hold me after a fight, whispering that he would protect me forever. They didn't understand that the more intense the pain, the more intense the love that followed. They didn't see that the pain made the love feel more real, more earned. I was addicted to the cycle. I wasn't addicted to the abuse. I was addicted to the intense feeling of being saved by the very person who was hurting me. He was both the monster and the hero of my story. He would create the storm, and then he would hold me as we weathered it together, making me believe that we were in it against the world. The breaking point didn't happen in a single moment of clarity. It happened slowly, a slow and painful peeling back of a scab that had been there for years. A therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Evelyn, finally put a name to what I was feeling: trauma bonding. She explained the psychology of it all, the cycle of abuse and affection, the intensity of the love, the isolation. She didn't just tell me to leave him. She helped me understand why I stayed. She helped me see that the intense love I felt was a survival mechanism, a way for my brain to cope with the chaos he created. She helped me see that his love wasn't love at all. It was control. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done. It wasn't just leaving a partner. It was leaving a part of myself. I had to learn how to live without the highs and lows. I had to learn to trust the quiet, steady rhythm of a life that wasn't defined by trauma. I had to learn that real love isn't a roller coaster of pain and relief. It's a slow, gentle, and steady kind of peace. I'm still healing. The echoes of his voice, the feeling of that intense bond, still come back to me sometimes. But now, when I feel those old feelings creeping in, I tell myself a new story. A story about a woman who found the strength to untangle herself from the bond that was breaking her, and who is now learning what it means to truly love herself. And that, I've learned, is the most powerful love of all. My father left me a house and a savings account when he passed. Not a fortune, but a start. It was my nest egg, my safety net, the one thing that made me feel secure in a world that felt very insecure after he was gone. He used to tell me, "This is your freedom, sweetheart. Never let anyone take it from you." And then Mark came along. He was everything my father was not: charming, exciting, and full of big ideas. My family didn't trust him. My sister would say he was too smooth, that he talked too much about my dad's money. But Mark would just laugh it off. "They're just worried about you," he'd say. "They don't want you to grow up." Slowly, subtly, he started to turn me against them. Comment here, a sigh there. He'd say my sister was jealous of our happiness. He'd get upset if I went to my mother's house for too long. It was always about me, about protecting me. "I just don't like how they make you feel," he'd whisper. After an argument that he'd started, I started to believe him. I started to think my family was the problem, that their love was suffocating, and that only Mark truly understood me. Pulled away. The weekly phone calls stopped. The Sunday dinners became monthly, then stopped entirely. The space they used to fill in my life became empty, and Mark filled it. He became my everything. My family was just a distant memory, a problem I had solved to achieve my newfound peace. Then came the business idea. It was brilliant, he said. I can't miss opportunity to turn my modest inheritance into a real fortune. He needed a loan from me just for a year. He showed me spreadsheets and graphs, and his excitement was contagious. He made me feel like we were a team, building a future together. "This is for us," he'd say. "I want to take care of you forever." He needed access to my accounts. He said it was just easier for the transfers. I had a moment of doubt, a flash of my father's face. "Never let anyone take it from you." But I pushed it away. He was my family now. He was my love. The money was gone in 6 months. All of it. I found out when a letter arrived from the bank. It wasn't the business venture he promised. It was a gambling debt, a series of bad bets, a desperate attempt to get back the money he'd already lost. All the spreadsheets, all the promises, all the talk of our future. It had all been a lie. And when I confronted him, the man who was supposed to be my protector, my only family, looked at me with cold, empty eyes. "Don't you dare raise your voice at me," he said. "Do you know what I went through to try and make you happy?" It was in that moment I realized I was more than just broke. I was alone. He had not only stolen my father's money, he had stolen my family, my support system, my very voice. He had isolated me so completely that when everything fell apart, there was no one left to call. Now, years later, I have nothing to show for that time but my own hands, which I used to rebuild. The money is gone, but I'm slowly getting my family back. I'm slowly finding my voice again, and I'm finally listening to the words my father always told me. I met Mark in my mid-20s. He was everything I thought I wanted. He was handsome, kind, and steady. We talked about our future, our dreams, and what kind of life we wanted to build together. A house, a dog, 2 kids. It was a simple, beautiful dream. And it all came true. Our life was a quiet, comfortable rhythm of shared meals and Sunday morning walks. I was happy. I was safe. I was sure. The first hint of a lie wasn't a secret phone call or a suspicious text message. It was a silence. A deep, heavy silence whenever a certain subject came up. Like our college days or his friendships before me. He would just get quiet and look away. I thought he was just a private person. I respected his boundaries. I never pushed. I never knew that silence was where he kept the other half of his life. The truth came out in the ugliest way. We were at a friend's wedding, and a man approached our table. A man Mark had told me was an old college buddy. He was laughing, reminiscing about some story, and then he said, "Man, I'll never forget that night you told us all you were bisexual." The room went quiet for me. The music, the laughter, all of it faded. All I could hear was a ringing in my ears. The world as I knew it tilted on its axis. I looked at Mark, and his face was a mask of pure terror. He didn't deny it. He just looked at me with an apology in his eyes that was 1,000 times more painful than the truth itself. The confrontation that night was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. He told me he was bisexual. He told me he had known for a long time. He told me he was afraid to tell me. He said he loved me, that I was the woman he chose to have a family with. He told me he thought he could leave that other part of himself behind, that he could be what I wanted him to be. The devastation wasn't about his sexuality. That was his truth to own. The trauma was about the years of lies. It was about the realization that the man I had trusted with my entire life was a stranger. The person I had built my life with, the person I had shared my bed with for a decade, had a whole other identity, a whole other part of himself that I knew nothing about. The person he showed me was a performance. I started to reevaluate every single memory we had. Was his love for me real, or was it just a desperate attempt to fit into a life he thought he was supposed to have? The vacations he took with the guys, the weekends he was working late, the excuses he made for being quiet and distant, all of it was now tainted with the bitter aftertaste of a lie. The hardest part was that he was still the man I knew. He was still kind. He was still a loving father to our child. He was just also a stranger. He had been a stranger all along. The road to healing from that kind of betrayal is long. It's not just a breakup you have to get over. It's a rebuilding of your entire reality. You have to learn to trust your own judgment again. You have to learn that the person you thought you knew, the life you thought you had, was all a fragile house of cards. My journey now is about finding my own truth. It's about remembering who I was before I met him and before the lies. It's about learning to trust the silence again. But this time, it will be my own. The first lie my mother taught me wasn't a big one. It was so small, so simple, I didn't even know it was a lie until I was a grown woman. I was 5 years old and I fell off my bike. I scraped my knee, and it was a terrible scrape, all blood and gravel. I ran crying to my mother, holding my leg. She looked at it, patted my head, and said, "It's nothing. You're fine. Stop crying." And so I did. I stopped crying. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I believed her. I believed that my pain was nothing, that it wasn't real. That pattern became the soundtrack to my childhood. When I was sad because my best friend moved away, she'd say, "You're not sad, you're just being dramatic. You'll make new friends." When my heart was broken by a boy in high school, she'd say, "You're not heartbroken, you're just being silly. You'll get over it." When I was stressed about college applications, she'd say, "You're not stressed, you're just being lazy. Stop worrying and just do it." Every time I expressed a difficult emotion, she would meet it with denial. My sadness was drama. My fear was an overreaction. My anger was disrespect. It was a constant, subtle form of torture, a slow erosion of my sense of self. She never told me my feelings were wrong. She just told me they didn't exist. She denied my experience so effectively that I learned to deny it myself. I became a pro at it. I learned to smile when I wanted to cry. I learned to laugh when I felt lost. My body felt like a house with locked doors, and all my real feelings were trapped inside, knocking at the windows, desperate to get out. The real breaking point was a moment that, to her, meant nothing. It was when our dog, a sweet old beagle named Max, passed away. I was in my teens, and Max had been my constant companion. I came home from school and found her digging a hole in the backyard, her face expressionless. "He's gone," she said, her voice flat. I started to cry, a deep, heavy sob, and she stopped digging, looked at me and said, "Stop that. It's just a dog. We'll get another one." In that moment, a part of me went numb. I realized I couldn't grieve, couldn't be sad. The lie she had been teaching me all my life became my reality. I truly believed I shouldn't be feeling this way. I truly believed my grief was an overreaction. The lie followed me into adulthood. I'm a successful woman. I have a good job. I have friends. But I feel like a ghost in my own life. I can't express my emotions. When I'm happy, I feel a disconnect. When I'm sad, a numbness. When my friends talk about their feelings, I have to mentally translate what they're saying because I don't feel it in my gut. My biggest fear isn't of being hurt. It's of not being able to feel anything at all. It was my therapist who finally gave me the truth. She listened to me talk about my childhood, and she said, "She wasn't teaching you to be strong. She was teaching you to be silent." Now, years into therapy, I'm slowly unlocking the doors of my own heart. I'm learning to say, I am sad. I am angry. That did hurt. It's the most terrifying and freeing thing I've ever done. The lie I lived for so long is finally being replaced with the truth. The first time he hit me, it wasn't out of anger. It was out of surprise. We were arguing about something trivial, the TV volume, I think. He was yelling, and I was yelling back, and I raised my hand in frustration. He flinched, and his own hand came up in a reflex. It wasn't a hard slap, just a stinging impact on my cheek. And then he froze. His face went pale. He looked at his own hand like it belonged to a stranger. He fell to his knees and begged for my forgiveness. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I would never hurt you. I don't know what came over me." He promised he would never do it again. And I believed him. In that moment, all I saw was the man I loved, horrified by his own actions. I saw a scared little boy who needed my love to be better. So I held him. I comforted him. I forgave him. But the monster had found a door. The next time, it was different. It wasn't an accident. We were arguing again, and I said something that hurt his pride. He pushed me against the wall, his hands on my shoulders, and the anger in his eyes was cold and calculating. "Don't you ever talk to me like that again," he hissed. Afterwards, he came back with flowers and apologies. He would cook my favorite meal, tell me I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever met. The cycle was a twisted kind of ballet. The anger, the violence, and then the deep, sorrowful repentance. And I, the foolish dancer, would believe in the apology every single time. The emotional torture was worse than the physical pain. It was the constant fear. The fear of saying the wrong thing, of looking at him the wrong way, of making him angry. My world became smaller and smaller. I stopped going out. I stopped seeing my friends. I became a master of reading his mood, of seeing the storm coming in his eyes before it broke. My body was a constant state of readiness, a coiled spring waiting for the next hit, the next push, the next slap. So why did I stay? It's a question everyone asks. The truth is, I stayed because he told me I deserved it. He told me I was the one making him angry. He told me I was too sensitive. He told me that if I left, I would be nothing. And when he was begging and crying, I truly believed that beneath all the anger was the man I loved, fighting to get out. I thought my love was his only hope. The end came during a blackout. We were fighting in the dark, and in the confusion, I ran for the front door. My hand was on the knob and his was on my wrist. I remember the pain, the feeling of my arm being twisted, and the shock of the cold air hitting my face as I stumbled outside. In that moment, I realized something. He didn't care if I left. He just cared that I was leaving him. The road to healing has been long and hard. My body healed, but the scars are everywhere. They are in my sudden fear of a raised hand. They are in my hesitation to talk about myself. They are in the way I look at men on the street, trying to see the monster hiding behind the mask. But I'm still here. I'm speaking. I'm walking in the light, and I'm telling my story. The monster is gone. And my only hope now is that my voice is loud enough to help someone else find the door, too.